Dear friend, before we get to the story, I'll ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me. I was sitting at the table, rubbing my ankle and watching Shayna dance. I swear this woman was conceived on the dance floor and was born to spend her whole life on it. I didn't look back to make sure, but I was willing to bet that most of the eyes in this place were on her and her partner. Not that he had anything to do with it. Compared to Shayna, every man she danced with looked like Fred Astaire or Gene Kelly, even if they had two left legs. Normally I would be the one dancing with her, but I sprained my ankle at work and was unable to even walk, let alone dance. But I promised her to spend the evening together. Even when I was in the best shape, I couldn't keep up with her on the dance floor, so I got used to her dancing with others. Most of the people there were regular visitors, and they knew what was what. As soon as I sat down after dancing with Shayna and didn't get up during the next set, they realized they could come over and ask her to dance. Shayna asked me if I minded, and of course I never said no. During the evening, I danced about 2/3 of the dances and the rest got the remaining third. I didn't really mind because I liked watching her move as much as I liked being around her. Watching her move to the music, I remembered how we met. It was at a school dance. She was there with a guy from the football team and he didn't have a rhythm at all. He could move normally on the football field, but on the dance floor he might as well have been a stump. Shayna was getting angry at him and it showed. I watched her, and even with the stump she looked good. Watching her, I thought how sad it was that she didn't have a partner who could do her justice. I came to the bachelor party with dancing not because I couldn't find a date, but because I had to work that night, so I didn't plan to attend it. Then the girl quit, and the boss had to change the work schedule, and as a result I had a day off. It was already too late to make a date, and knowing that some girls had gone to a bachelor party with dancing, I decided to go. There were about a dozen girls who came alone, so I was able to find a lot of dancing partners. I loved dancing, and thanks to my mother, who made me take dance lessons, I wasn't so bad. Not like Shayna, but who was it then? I knew who Shayna was, but I didn't know her personally. She transferred here from another state at the beginning of the 10th grade, but there were 242 children in our stream, and you couldn't know them all. Let's add to this that we didn't move in the same circles. She ran with the jocks and the so-called friends crowd, and I came to school, served my time, and immediately after classes went to work part-time. Anyway, back to Shane and the stump. Everyone present could see that she was upset, and everyone heard her say that she must have been out of her mind to come to the dance with Jimmy. Mind you, I don't want to say anything bad about Jimmy. I just want to say that he didn't dance well enough to satisfy Shane. I was talking to a couple of guys when the band started to tango. Someone tugged at my sleeve, and when I turned around, I saw Shayna. Frank, right? I nodded in the affirmative, and she asked, "Can you tango, Frank?" I said I could, and she took my hand and led me out onto the dance floor. She didn't invite me to dance with her, just took my hand and pulled me along. I won't say it was a magical moment, but we were moving along well. When the song ended, I escorted her back to the table where she was sitting, thanked her for dancing, and returned to the guys I was talking to. 5 minutes later, Phil Reed said, "Here's your new girlfriend." I turned around and Shayna came up to me. "Do you have a minute?" she asked me. "Of course." "Can I talk to you in private?" "I guess," I said, and she took me a little away from the group I was talking to. "I have a problem. More precisely, two problems. Jimmy didn't know how to tango and obviously got mad when I asked you to be my partner." Bev Holbrook said he grumbled for a couple of seconds and then suddenly said, "Fuck her. She can walk home," and left. "I need a dance partner for the rest of the evening, and I need a ride home. Could you become a dance partner? I can do both, if you don't mind being seen in this pathetic wreck that I call a car. Unless it leaks when it rains. Not yet, but I'm not making any promises for the future." I spent the rest of the evening as Shayna's dance partner, and when it was over, I drove her home. When I walked her to the door, she said, "I had fun. What do you say we do it again sometime?" "I would love to." "Call me, okay? It may take some time. It depends on my work schedule." "It's okay. Just don't forget to call sometime." That's how my relationship with Shayna began. Our dates were a bit irregular because I didn't have a regular work schedule. The situation changed from week to week, so Shayna and I never reached the stage of a permanent boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, and because of my irregular schedule, she couldn't count on me during her regular dates on Fridays and Saturdays. Her parents wouldn't let her date during the week, And since I could count on a midweek weekend 3 times out of every 4 weeks, she dated other guys on weekends. I would love to become her regular boyfriend, but the only way to do that was to quit my job, and I couldn't do that. My parents let me buy a car when I was 16 and they paid half, but I had to take care of the license plates, insurance, gas station, and upkeep myself, which meant I had a job. I was able to arrange with my boss to have a day off on prom day, and I was able to ask Shayna to come with me in advance, and she agreed. The day of the prom, in my opinion, was just magical. Shayna and I danced all the dances together, and one day we were the only couple on the dance floor when the band was playing samba. When prom was over, we went to a couple of after-prom parties, and at one of them at Tim Shane's house, she said, "I have a surprise for you, baby." A surprise? What? On my 17th birthday, I promised myself that I would give up my virginity on my 18th birthday or at the prom, whichever came first. I turned 18 last Saturday, but the guy I was dating was nothing special, and I knew I'd be at the prom with you, so you'll get the prize. That is, you'll get it if you want it. What do you say? My mom and dad didn't raise stupid kids, so you know what I said to that, and I quickly found us a motel. Shayna didn't know, but I started the night as a virgin too. I had no experience, but I had watched at least a dozen adult films, so I knew what to do. Besides, I've read a lot of articles from Penthouse, so it seemed to me that I have a clear idea of what a woman would like. I was determined to make Shayna think I was special, so once we got undressed and were done with all the kissing and handshaking, I surprised her and got down on top of her. I wanted her to think that I was the man. We could have made love. After the prom, everything went back to normal. I had maybe 1 day off out of 3, and Shayna always went out with me on Fridays and Saturdays. I could come even if she had to interrupt a date with someone else to do it, and we always ended the date making love. I talked to Shayna about being permanent and exclusive, but she said no. She did it softly, but it was still a no. I'd love to, baby. I'd really love to, but I can't just stay at home on Fridays and Saturdays just because you have to work. I could do this if you only had to work on weekends occasionally, but you usually end up working most of them. I was in love with Shayna, but I wasn't stupid. On Fridays and Saturdays, Shayna went on dates that I couldn't be on, and since she was reaching for the bed like a duckling for water, I decided that her other boyfriends were lucky. I didn't know that for sure. I suspected it, and it pissed me off, but there was nothing I could do about it. Graduation came, and with it the changes. Shayna went to college, but higher education was not part of my plans. My father got me into a tool and stamp training program where he worked, and that meant I could quit my part-time job. Now I had the weekend off, but Shayna was gone. College was pretty close, only 50 kilometers away, but I figured that Shayna would meet a lot of new guys and some college jerk would be attracted to her. So imagine my surprise when I returned home from work on Friday after the first week of the internship program, and my mom told me that Shayna went to college. She called and asked me to call her back. "What time will you pick me up tonight?" "What? You don't work on weekends anymore, and Carol Moser is having a party. What time will you pick me up?" I picked her up at 7, and we've been inseparable ever since. I proposed to her, and she agreed. But we agreed to wait until she graduated from high school before getting married. In her junior year, we had difficulties when she wanted to go to Florida with friends for spring break, and I didn't want her to leave. We had a fight, and I heard the phrase, "I don't belong to you," addressed to me, and she went to Fort Lauderdale. Lauderdale. It pissed me off, so when she came back, I avoided her and didn't answer her phone. We spent 3 months apart before she settled on my porch and didn't move until I promised to sit down and talk to her. We got married 6 months after Shayna's graduation and just celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary. The music stopped, the musicians announced a break, and Shayna's dancing partner led her to a table and thanked her for dancing. We sipped drinks and chatted with the people we were sitting with until the band returned. When their next set started, a guy came up to our table and asked if he could dance with Shayna. I just looked at this guy and immediately realized that I didn't like him. Just looking at him gave me a bad feeling. I looked at Shayna and saw that she wanted to dance, so I did what I always did and said I didn't mind if my wife did it. The guy was good. I have to give him credit. He and Shayna seemed to glide across the floor with a smooth grace that I might have admired if I hadn't felt such instant dislike for this guy. The melody ended, and Shayna and her partner stayed on the dance floor and waited for the next number. And when it started, they hugged each other and started moving to the music. I watched for a while, and then I got up and went to the bathroom. And on the way back, I stopped to talk to a guy I went to school with and hadn't seen for a long time. When I returned to the table, Shayna wasn't there, and I noticed that her purse wasn't there, so I assumed she was in the ladies' room. When she didn't come back 15 minutes later, I looked around for her, but I didn't see her anywhere. After another 5 minutes, I went into the women's bathroom and found that she was not there. I was standing in the hallway leading to the toilets and looking at the dance floor when a pretty blonde came up to me and said, "You won't find her here." "What? Your wife, girlfriend, or whoever? You won't find her here." I looked at her and asked, "What do you mean?" "She left with that jerk who brought me." "What are you talking about?" "They left the dance floor, came to your table. She took her purse, and then they got into his car and drove away." "This is a joke, right?" "I'm afraid not. We were abandoned. I spent another half hour looking for Shayna, but I still couldn't find any trace of her. I called her cell phone a couple of times, but I got to voicemail. In the end, I had to come to terms with what the blonde told me. I went in search of her, and when I found her, I asked her to tell me where her boyfriend lives. I have no idea. It was just my second date with him, and all I know is that he's a freelance carpenter, loves Mexican food, drives a late-model Chevrolet pickup truck, and lives in an apartment on the east side of town. I know he lives in the apartment because he always complained about the noise that was there. What are you going to do? I think all I can do is go home and wait for what happens next. Wouldn't it be too much of a problem for you to give me a ride? I don't have money for a taxi with me, and I don't know anyone here. Grab your stuff and let's go." On the way home, she asked, "Does she do this often? This is the first time she's done something like this." "Have you been together long?" "Last week it was 5 years since we got married, and before that we were together for a couple of years." She was silent the rest of the way to her house, and when we got there, she said, "I should invite you in and then use you so that if I ever see him again, I can tell him how good you are and thank him for giving me the opportunity to get to know you. The only problem is that if I did, I'd hate myself in the morning. It's all right, you look great, and it would be hard for me to say no if you invited me in, but I would say no. I've never cheated on Shayna, and even though things aren't looking too good right now, I still need to figure out what's going on before I give up on marriage and start looking for company. If you start looking, you know where I live." "That's right, but I do not know your name or phone number." "It's true that you don't know. How stupid of me. I should have introduced myself when I asked you for a ride." She rummaged in her purse, took out a business card, and handed it to me. It read, "Tanya Ensign, real estate broker." And there were 5 phone numbers, a fax number, and an internet address. "Use your cell phone number. This is the fastest way to get to me." "Nice to meet you, Tanya Ensign." I held out my hand to her and introduced myself. "Nice to meet you, Josh Daniels. Thanks for the ride, and good luck to you." When I got home, Shayna wasn't there, and there were no messages on my answering machine. I called her cell phone again, but switched back to voicemail. I didn't bother to leave a message. I turned on the TV and watched all sorts of nonsense until 2 in the morning, and then went to bed. When I got up in the morning, Shayna wasn't at home, and when she didn't show up by noon, I called her mother and sister, but none of them had heard from her. Naturally, they wanted to know why I was looking for her, and I told them what little I knew, and her mother advised me to call the police. I wasn't ready for that yet. I unsuccessfully called a couple of her friends, and after a dozen calls to her cell phone, I gave up on this idea. At 6 o'clock in the evening, I finally called the police, but they told me that the man had to disappear for 48 hours before they would accept a missing persons report. Meanwhile, I was getting more and more angry at the situation, and by the time I woke up Sunday morning, I was fed up. I called a locksmith, and by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I had changed all the locks in the house. By 6 in the evening, all of Shayna's belongings were packed in boxes and bags and were in the garage. I didn't change the code on the garage door lock so she could come in and get her stuff if she ever came home. I had a pretty good relationship with my neighbors, and I talked to a few of them and told them that my wife had run off with a truck driver, that I expected her to come home while I was at work and clean up the house. I asked them to write down the license plate number if someone would bring Shane to the house. On Monday, I got up and went to work, and at lunchtime I went to the police station and filed a missing person report. The detective who did this was honest with me. There's not much we can do. She left this place on her own, voluntarily got into the guy's car and drove away with him. We'll keep an eye on the hospitals in case she shows up, but we're not going to waste our energy on that. I told him that I understood everything, left the station and returned to work. At 2 o'clock, I got a call from Alan, the guy who lived next to me on the south side. About 5 minutes ago, a red Chevrolet pickup truck pulled up to your driveway. Your wife came out and tried to enter the house, but she couldn't. And then she got back in the truck and they drove away. I've memorized the license plate. He gave it to me and I wrote it down. I called a friend who I knew could get information from the traffic police, and at 4 he called me back, giving me the name and address of the owner of the Chevrolet. At 4:10 I got another call. It was Shayna. No greetings, just said, I came home and couldn't get in. No wonder, because I changed all the locks. Can I go back home? Of course not. If you understand that you will not be allowed into the house. All your stuff is in the garage. The old code is still working, so you can log in and pick them up. Everything that remains there the next day will be thrown to the side of the road along with the rest of the garbage. I need to talk to you, honey. Don't call me cute, Shayna. You've given up that right. And as for talking, you said all that with what you did on Friday night. Please, Josh, I have to get back to work, Shayna. Goodbye. But it's never that easy. When I got home that evening, Shayna was sitting on the porch steps waiting for me. I do not know how long she stayed there, but if she appeared at the time when I usually returned from work, she sat there for almost 4 hours. When I finished my work, I went and checked the address they gave me for the owner of the Chevrolet. As Tanya had said, it was an apartment in the eastern part of the city. There was no Chevrolet truck in the parking lot, so I parked so that I could see the door to apartment 2A and prepared to wait. I was there for a little over an hour and 40 minutes before a red Chevrolet Silverado pulled up and parked in front of the house. When the driver got out, I saw that it was the same jerk who invited Shayna to dance on Friday night. I sat for another hour and watched, and then the door of apartment 2A opened, and a jerk dressed in a leather jacket came out. He went to the maintenance building and removed the tarp from the Harley Softail. He started the engine and drove off into the night. At that moment, I saw everything I needed, so I went home and found Shayna waiting for me. Where have you been? I've been waiting here for hours. Since I have no one else to rush home to, I ran away from work on some business. What the fuck do you want? I want to sit down and talk to you. What should we talk about, Shayna? That I was stupid and screwed up. We can go inside and get comfortable, and then I can talk quietly. I can hear you perfectly well here. I don't want the neighbors to know about my business. The neighbors already know. I talked to all of them, told them that you ran away and would probably come back and try to break into the house, and asked them to call the police if they saw this happening. So just go ahead and say what you want to say. Please, Josh, I don't want the whole world to know about it. Let me tell you at home. I wanted to fight with her, but unfortunately I liked this dumb bitch, so I gave up and let her enter the house. She sat down at the kitchen table and I took 2 beers out of the fridge and sat down next to her. I pushed one of the cans of beer across the table to her and then leaned back in my chair and waited. She took a sip of Bud and then said, "It's not going to be easy, and to explain it, I need to go back to the past. It all started with the fact that we had a big fight when I went to Florida for spring break. I was furious, and the first night there at a party, I met a guy. He stuck to me, and my mindset was, I'll show Josh. I don't belong to him, I belong to myself, and I will do what I like. I ended up in bed with Dan. I can't sugarcoat it, Josh. It was by far the best lovemaking. I was drunk and in a pretty good mood. You know how I get when I dance with a really good partner, and I said, of course. We were dancing in the corner and with our backs to the dance floor. I was blocking the view from the other side, and he pulled it out. To be honest, I must have been in a trance when he led me to his truck. I wasn't thinking about anything. To be honest, I never thought about you or the fact that I'm a married woman until Saturday morning. I woke up, saw Craig sleeping next to me, and only then did I think, my God, what have I done? I panicked, jumped out of bed, and started looking for my clothes. Craig woke up, grabbed me and pulled me back onto the bed, and then I forgot about everything except the sensations. By the time we finished on Saturday, I was afraid to go home or even call you. On Sunday, everything was about the same, but I can honestly say that on Sunday, I really didn't want to be there. I wanted to be with you. I wanted to be loved. From Sunday afternoon until today, I was bracing myself to go home, and when I got here, I couldn't get in. You'll never know what it cost me to be here on the steps waiting for you to come home. Dozens of times I wanted to jump up and run away. How I had the courage to come here, stay here, and wait it out, you'll never know. I looked at her for a few moments, and then I asked, so why are you here, Shayna? You've got the courage to come here, but why? Because I want to go home. You ran off with some big asshole, disappeared for 3 days, and then you expect me to take you back? I hope so. I did something stupid and screwed up, and I know it, but I love you, Josh, and I need to be with you. I hope that you will find the strength in your heart to forgive me and let me return home. For how long? Until that jerk Craig calls you and asks if you're ready for another fun weekend. Can you give me a good reason why I should invite you back? Just one good reason, Shayna? I love you and I know that you love me. At least, that was the case until last Friday evening. We've had a wonderful 5 years together, and I promise the next 25 will be just as wonderful if you give me a chance. Never again, Josh. I swear to you, never again. I do not know what came over me this time. I can't explain it, but never again. I do not know, Shayna. You're asking a lot of me, and I'm not sure I can handle it. Basically, you're asking me to forget about what happened last weekend so that I can trust you, and let life go on as if nothing had happened. I'm not even sure I can trust you again. I'm not sure I can think every day about whether the day will come when you decide that you need another man again. I swear to God, Josh, never again. It was a huge mistake. I regret this and promise that it will never happen again. I looked at her and she looked so unhappy that I wanted to hug her and comfort her, but of course I didn't. After a few seconds of silence, I said, I have to think about it, Shayna. Like I said, I'm not sure I can handle someone I can't trust. You can take the spare bedroom for now, but it might be useful for you to stay out of my sight for a while. You won't regret it, Josh. I promise you that you won't regret it. I pushed what was going on with Shayna into the background and turned my attention to Mr. Craig Mercer. He was going to pay for what he had done, but I had to do it in a way that would cause maximum damage and still avoid jail. This meant that I probably wouldn't get the pleasure of seeing his face when he realized exactly who had framed him. I would have loved to smear Mercer on the ground, turning him into a pile of shit, but it wasn't meant to happen. My friend Joel served 5 years for hooligan assault because he beat up a guy he caught making love to his wife. No, the best thing I could do was beat Mercer up with an unknown assailant, and then hint to him that the same thing happened to him that happens to guys who mess with someone else's woman. I took advantage of my vacation and followed Mercer. He didn't seem to have a steady job. He worked as a carpenter, but he never stayed in the same place for more than a couple of days. The invariable thing was that every evening when he returned home, he uncovered his Harley and went for a ride. As for the family, I decided to give Shayna a chance. Perhaps this is not the wisest thing to do, but it is a truism that love is not only blind, but also makes you stupid and allows you to do things that you usually don't even think about. She made promises to me, but by letting her come back, I didn't take them at face value. I think Ronald Reagan said, "Trust, but verify." I had a friend who was interested in electronics, and he told me how to install a home bug on my phone. It wasn't difficult, and I got most of what I needed for work at Walmart. It was a purely symbolic offer since she could still talk to Mercer while at work or on her cell phone. She had problems with work, as they did not approve of personal calls during working hours, so she would hardly give him her number. I had no way of knowing if she had given him her cell phone number, but I could check the monthly reports of our mobile operator. Every evening when I returned from work, I went down to the basement and checked if the recorder had recorded anything interesting. Shayna returned home a week ago when the first call rang. Hello? Hello, sweet cheeks. Did you miss me? What do you want, Craig? The same as you, sweet cheeks. I'm sorry, Craig, but I'm not interested. Of course it's interesting, sweet cheeks. You just haven't gotten rid of the guilt yet, but you'll get rid of it soon. I'll call you again in a couple of days. Think of me, sweet cheeks. Think that I am ready to accept you. Don't bother me, Craig. I'm really not interested in this. Let's see. We'll talk later, sweet cheeks. When I went to dinner, I casually asked Shanna how her day had been. Pretty good until I got home from work. What happened then? Craig called. So what? He wants to be together again. Are you going to? Damn it, Josh. I told you I'd never date again, and I mean it. Okay, no offense. Don't forget who's in charge of the party in this mess. I have the right to ask. We spent the rest of dinner in silence, and before going to bed, she tried to follow me into the bedroom, but I just pointed her to an empty room and she took the hint. His next call came 2 days later. How are you, sweet cheeks? I told you not to bother me anymore. I know, but that's not what you meant. I signed you up for the weekend. To you or to me. That's not going to happen, Craig. The first time was a serious mistake for which I will have to pay for a long time. It won't happen again. Don't call me anymore. And she hung up. At dinner that night, she didn't mention the call. That evening, she tried to follow me into the bedroom again, and this time I let her. She did her best to destroy me. I'm going to make you forget, baby. I'm going to make you forget, and I'm going to make you forget for the rest of your life. I took another precaution and put a voice-controlled cassette recorder under the seat of her car. When I was checking it the day after Mercer's second call, I heard her talking. Hello? Oh, hello. I miss you too. Of course not. He's going to be suspicious for a long time. Yes. If he's recording the phone on tape, then all he's heard is what we want him to hear. I even told him that you called. What do you mean, how did he take it? He was suspicious. He asked me if I was going to see you again, and I denied it quite loudly. No, baby, not anytime soon. First, I have to convince him that I'm going to be a good little girl. I want it too, baby. I think about it all the time. No, Craig. Don't be a fool, Craig. I won't leave him for you. Yes, baby, I know. I remember every one of them and wish there were more, much more. But I love Josh and I don't love you. So what if I'm the best ass you've ever had? I don't love you. I love him and I will never leave him. Be patient, baby. It's going to take me a while to get to a place where I can free myself so that he doesn't wonder where I've been. It may take a couple of months, but we can do it again. No. Keep pretending to call home in case he's eavesdropping. The more I tell you to stop bothering me, the sooner he'll start trusting me. Good. Bye, baby. It's not that I didn't expect it. I mean, something made me tap her home phone and install a voice recorder in her car. It's time to bring the planned compensation down on Craig Mercer's head. It's nice to have good friends. I told Billy Newbert about my problem and what I wanted to do. I asked if he had any suggestions, and he made them. At 1905, Mercer drove into the parking lot of an apartment complex, and at 2010, he left the apartment, opened the Harley, and drove it out of the parking lot. I followed him at a sufficient distance so that he would not suspect anything. As we drove, I carefully watched the view from behind and the road ahead in search of oncoming traffic. It took about 10 minutes before the situation got better. There was no oncoming traffic behind me or ahead. I stepped on the gas, taxied to overtake Mercer, and having caught up with him, sharply turned the steering wheel to the right at a speed of 80 kilometers per hour and crashed into him. He and the Harley drove off the road. I drove past him and drove away. I drove Billy's car to the Safeway parking lot, where Stan North picked me up and drove me back to work. Billy unhooked the lock from the steering column of his car and then drove it to John Marshall's house, where he sat down and played poker with 6 friends until 2 hours after Mercer's accident. When he was about to leave, he went outside and found that his car had been stolen and called the police. My alibi was that I was working. No, there was no one else there to confirm it, but the security guard at the front desk checked me out about an hour after Mercer was knocked off the road. As far as he knew, I had been there before. There was no way he could have known that I left the building through the loading dock, where Stan met me and took me to pick up Billy's car. Mercer would not have been able to recognize me even if he had looked back when I rode up to him from the side, because I was wearing a ski mask. Anyway, it didn't matter, since the cops never came to see me. The insurance covered the damage to Billy's car, and I reimbursed him for the amount to be deducted. Besides, I can do him a huge favor if he ever needs it. The next morning, I read the newspaper and drank coffee while Shayna made breakfast. Honey? Yes. What was the name of the guy you snuck out with that night? Damn it, Josh. I thought we agreed not to mention it anymore. I know, but it says here in the newspaper that Craig Mercer was the victim of a hit and run last night, and he is in the hospital in the intensive care unit. I never told you his name. You shouldn't have done that. When he brought you to the house, one of the neighbors wrote down his number, and I asked a guy I know to check it to find out the name and address of this jerk. Josh, you wouldn't do that. Didn't do what? Did you hurt him? Why Shayna? Do you have feelings for this asshole? Are you saying that my revenge will upset you? No, of course not. I just don't want you to get in trouble. I screwed up and I'm sorry, but I don't want you to seek revenge or try to get even in any way. I'll die if you get in trouble because of my stupidity. I didn't say another word on the subject, but the thought was thrown up. It wouldn't hurt me at all if she thought I could do something like that. 2 days after the accident, I called to see if Mercer could have visitors. I was told that it was possible, and I came during visiting hours. I entered his room and saw that he had a cast all over his body. I went over to the bed, looked at him, and said, "Damn it, you must have made someone very angry." He was a little out of his mind, probably from the painkillers, but he managed to squeeze out, "Who are you? Don't you recognize me? Are you saying that you can ask a man if you can dance with his wife, go away with her for the weekend and not even remember his face? You did this to me. You bastard. I'll get you for this. I'm sorry, asshole, but it's not my fault. If you ever find out who did it, you can thank him. I was planning to get back at you this weekend. 3 of my friends were going to hold you down while I castrated you. Whoever did this saved your family jewels. At least for now, but you can expect to see me and my 3 friends when you get out of here and get back on your feet. Yes, indeed, Craig, old man. You'll see me again and you won't like it. You're not going to like this at all. See you. I left him with these thoughts and went home. At dinner, I told Shayna that I had stopped by the hospital to visit Mercer. I told him to hurry up and get better so I could try to help him. I told him that he should thank whoever did this to him for keeping his family jewels at least for a while. I've prepared everything to castrate the bastard this weekend, but now it's going to have to wait until he gets out of the hospital and gets his strength back. Are you crazy? They'll put you in jail. No, they won't. Me and the guys who will hold him down while I castrate him will be wearing ski masks so that he doesn't find out who we are. I have 6 guys who would swear that I was playing poker when it happened. He'll know it was me, but he won't be able to prove anything. Don't do this, Josh. You'll only get yourself into trouble. I'm starting to think you have some feelings for this guy. No, I just don't want you to go to jail. Do you expect me to just accept what that asshole did to me? Do I have to be some kind of weakling? This asshole thinks I'm a wimp, otherwise he would never have called here after you got home to try to persuade you to come to him again. I have to do this for my own peace of mind, Shayna. Like it or not, you know that my trust in you is not complete. I don't think you're going to go looking for a guy with a huge piece of meat between his legs. If you do this, and I find out, what I'll do to both of you, you don't even want to think about it. I'm just going to eliminate temptation, Shayna. I will remove the temptation for you and avenge it on him. You might just want to suggest that he leave the state if he calls you again. I'm not going out of state to castrate him, but I'm pretty damn sure I'll get to him if he stays here. 2 years have passed since Shayna messed up, and there have been some changes. Mercer really decided to work as a carpenter in another state. No one else called me at home, and he and Shayna never talked on their cell phone. I know this because I carefully check monthly bills on my cell phone and have never taken the recorder out of her car. I can't swear they've never spoken, but I've been keeping a close eye on Shayna, and she hasn't called to arouse even the slightest suspicion. I punished her a little bit, and I don't think most of them would even consider it harsh enough, but it struck a chord with her. We still go dancing, but I no longer agree when a guy comes up and asks her to dance. She either dances with me or doesn't dance at all, and since I'm only able to dance 1/3 of the tunes that are played in regular nightclubs, Shayna sits much more than she dances, and it kills her. She complained about it once or twice, but as soon as I remind her of what happened the last time I said yes, she immediately shuts up. End.